Hello and welcome to another edition of Shaping St. Bernard. I'm your host, Karen Boudry. Today we're going to talk everything coastal, what you need to know about restoration, protection, everything the parish is doing to protect, preserve, and actually build up our coastlines. And in order to do that, they actually had to create a coastal division. One did not exist 6 years ago when Guy McInnes took office. He put John Lane in charge of that department, and they've gone full steam ahead with major projects, major improvements in the parish. And I am joined by John Lane, the coastal director, right now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Karen. Really appreciate it.
Daunting task. 6 years ago, you came in and there was basically nothing there. How do you begin from scratch on something so large, so massive, and so important for the parish?
Yeah, it's exactly right. President McInnes had a vision when he first came in, and there's a lot of money out there for coastal restoration, and it's so important for us being on the front line of this entire process of coastal erosion and everything else that's hurricane protection and so forth. So there's a lot of money out there, so Guy McInnes wanted to start this program. And when we came into office, like you said earlier, there was very little stuff on the books for us to get. We didn't have the best relationship with the state. Now Guy McInnes now sits on the CPRA board, which is very important to us. So what we decided to do was, we had about $5 million, roughly around $5 million from the BP oil spill that St. Bernard had. The council dedicated that only for coastal restoration. So in order to leverage that money, we needed to develop a plan. So we hired an engineering firm to work with us and look at some of the projects and where we can go and try and leverage this money. And that we did. So we had virtually nothing to like a 67, maybe an 80-page document of projects and list of priorities of how we want to, direct us. It also came with funding matrix of how we're going to sort out this money to build these projects. Since then, in 6 years, we have now leveraged that $5 million to over $650 million worth of projects that are now on the books moving forward.
I'm floored. Okay.
It's amazing. It really is.
You're a magician.
You know
$5 million to $650. I want you doing my finances. Anyway.
And I'll be honest with you, it really is just, number one, being professional and talking to the state and trying to execute that plan. There's not a lot of parishes that have the extent of plan that we have right now. And it's pretty much laid out there. And basically what it is, it's a selling document. And once you put skin in the game, so we've taken some of our money and we would engineer and design a project. And then we would bring it to the state and say, we've already taken care of this. We're asking you to fund it to construction. And that's what we've did. And that's how we've gotten that ball rolling. And that has leveraged into all those projects.
Yeah, most folks go and say, hey, I just have an idea. Can you engineer it for me? Can you do the plans?
That's correct.
So by taking those first couple of steps.
That's right. It makes it more attractive to them because they want the same thing as we do. They want to build land as well. But the best way to do it is invest. And that's what we've done. We've invested our money wisely, and it's paid off for us thus far.
Well, let's talk about specific projects that people may be familiar with and some they may not be familiar with. Let's start with one that you think is one of the top projects. Because if I said name your number one, I'm sure that would be hard to do. Or maybe not.
No, there's a lot of things that we're very proud of. Okay. And not to put it in any particular order, because some mean more to other people than others. But there's Bayou Terrebonne Ridge restoration. We've already completed phase. We've engineered and designed that thing, brought that to the state to sell it. We've already done phase one. We're fixing to do phase two.
And what does phase one consist of in a nutshell?
We're putting a rock armoring around. So we did Bayou Gentili, and then we're starting to go around Bayou Terrebonne. Okay. So that is going to be lined with rocks. That's fixing to kick off there. But that just goes to show you, it's probably an $8 million project. We invested $1 million into it, and it's starting to come to fruition. Another big project, which is fixing to kick off right now to go to construction, is a Lake Barn marsh creation. It's going to be the largest marsh creation the state has ever done. It's going to happen right here in St. Bernard Parish. Wow. It's 2,800 acres of new marsh that's going to be created, and that should be kicking off probably within the next 2 months.
That's incredible.
To construction. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Well, we hear all the stats of, we lose, a football field a day and everything. Does that hold true in St. Bernard? Or are we different because of the layout and, you know, we've got all these different waterways and things. I mean, how does it?
No, I think it's
Fair.
I think it's true, and you know, we always, you know, if that's what they tell us, that's what the science shows, and that's what, you know, we go with that as well. But there's, like I said earlier, there's just a lot of other things other than losing land. You know, we have fishermen here that depend on that resource out there, and we need to protect that. So it's not just land; it's also, you know,
Well, it's economic
camps
as well,
yeah,
right?
camps. Families live down there, and it's our way of living. It's our heritage. It's our culture, and that all needs to be protected.
So you did something kind of unique for the fishermen that's not quite as restoration aimed, but a little more creative and something that was necessary. Tell me a little bit about that. I think it's Delacropa Island that you've got this project.
The Delacropa Complex, yeah. So we wanted to do something down in Delacropa where the entire community can kind of gather around and have fun and host parties and do things. So we built the Delacropa Pier. And we did that early on. We paid for it with our own money. And then in addition to that, we also felt that there was a need to expand the complex to put a boat hoist, which will give commercial fishermen access to get their boats out of the water. So we invested in this lift, and at any point a fisherman can call up. We can come take your boat out the water, put it on the blocks for you. You can work on it, paint it, fix it, do whatever you need to do. Give us a call back, we can put you back in the water, and you're back on your way in no time. Get back to work.
Now there are 4 projects out of 6, I believe, that you put forward to CPRA, which is Coastal Protection Restoration Authority.
This is actually, what you're referring to is CPRA. It's a different funding source. So what happens is it's a year-long process. Projects are nominated throughout the entire state. So in this process, there's maybe 40 or 50 projects that are nominated throughout the state. Throughout the year, it gets dwindled down. And then at the end of the year, around December 6th or 7th, they pick 4 projects. And out of the 6 years we've been here, we've gotten projects 4 years in a row. Well, 4 of the 6 years, I should say. And we're talking $35, $40 million projects.
What's next on the agenda? What's the next project that you're going to go after and seek to fund?
Well, what we're going after right now, we have partnered up with the state, and that's CPRA, Jim mentioned earlier. We partnered up with them. We're designing right now a long-distance sediment pipeline, which is going to bring sediment from the Mississippi River all the way down through Delacropa. It's going to be piped in, so we're not going to get an influx of water. We get mostly sediment. And that is going to revolutionize, literally, what can be done in St. Bernard Parish. Because once you have that infrastructure built, we can just keep pumping and pumping and pumping. So when we talked about those 4 projects from CPRA, the sediment source was out of Lake Leary. You can only dig that Lake Leary so far down without hurting yourself. Right. Now when we get this sediment pipeline, possibilities are endless. There's so much more projects that we can now do at a cheaper rate.
So what is something, as we wrap up here, that people out there who might be watching could do just on a personal level? If they're saying, you know, I know the parish is doing their part, what can I do just as one person or one family? What can I do to help?
Well, there's a lot, actually. And if you go to our website, there's a volunteer little sheet up there. And you can fill that out. And anytime there's some kind of volunteer event, we will contact you and let you know what's going on, whether it's just your family or an organization, whatever it may be. But one thing in particular, you know, we always say, we have this little motto that this is not St. Bernard Parish government's problem. This is St. Bernard's problem. So, you know, if you have an idea of something that you want done, you bring it to us, and we'll look into it. And that's exactly what happened with the Mangrove project that we've had. We've had a commercial fly fishing guy who approached us about doing something with mangroves. And we looked into it, we've raised money, we've gotten some partnerships involved, we've gotten Louisiana Sea Grant, Chalmette High with their 4-H program, the Mural Foundation, and many others, that we've all came together and developed this program. And what we do is, we take the high school students out and we go pick propagules, which are little mangrove seeds, if you will, that fall to the ground. We go in the marsh, we collect those, we bring them back to Chalmette High School, and then the students raise those little plants, those little seedlings, if you will, to mangroves. We come back the next year after they've grown, and we go out and take the kids and we go plant them. And we've done that now for 4 or 5 years, and it's been an unbelievably successful program, and we're so proud of it.
Well, this is a great segue because we have some video clips of the most recent mangrove planting, which is just really fun to watch and see how it all comes together. Thanks for being here. We're going to take a look now at the mangrove project.
We're on some of the eastern islands in St. Bernard Parish. Bayou Gardner, Dead Man's Island. We're out by Mosquito Bite right now. And basically what we're doing is we have a project with multiple agencies. I work for LSU Ag Center doing the 4-H work, planting black mangroves. Blaze, who works for the Mural Foundation, was showing us some of the second year and third year mangrove plants that we have growing down there, and you can see a difference in the heights of them.
We feel like we found kind of a sweet spot where there's a little bit more elevation and that the trees grow at a higher rate there. And so what we're hoping happens is, you know, that reef keeps the marsh edge intact on the edge of the bay, and those mangroves grow up and become a little bit of friction when we have, you know, like a small storm surge or maybe an east wind. It'll at least knock it down a little bit before it gets farther inland.
Louisiana has different issues. Some issues we have are subsidence. We have issues with nutria for eat owls. We got, you know, levees that contribute to the subsidence. Main thing you got out here is erosion. Okay, so stabilizing the banks. So black mangroves have a very involved root system. They reach out and they grab things. So what we've been trying to do out here is to help these islands, because these islands get a lot of wave action, you know, from boat traffic, but more predominantly some of the bigger action come from storms and hurricanes and things like that. So we would plant them along the line of the shoreline, okay, for the idea that, you know, some of this is going to be lost, but that berm line back there will hopefully over time will grab that land and stop it from continuing to erode.
We call this the Chalmette High 4-H Black Mangrove Program. It's a very diverse group of partners. We have everybody from Sea Grant and 4-H and LSU Ag to Department of Ag and Forestry, Coastal Department for the parish. We have ABLE, it's Anglers Bettering Louisiana's Estuaries, run by Lucas Bissett. It's actually his idea originally, and then Dockville and the Mural Foundation, we help out and assist with growing and planting and all. The Sheriff's Office, yeah, they are a big part of it. You know, it's a big team effort here and a lot of players involved, and we wouldn't be able to do it without, you know, all of the partners that are a part of it.
That is a great example of what people can accomplish when they join forces. And speaking of forces, a force behind Coastal in St. Bernard Parish is Kerri, Callais, councilwoman, who really made it your campaign when you ran for council that this is what you wanted to focus on. Why do you think it's so important, you know, personally?
Sure. So I came, when I was running for council, we were right in the middle of the diversion issue really heating up. And so, you know, serving on nonprofits, you know, fighting for that issue really brought Coastal to the forefront for me. How important it was and how much it could affect, you know, the people of St. Bernard if a coastal project is done wrong or done right. You know, and I didn't like the way that, you know, our relationship with the state and federal agencies was so controversial that it was not being listened to, our opinions weren't being heard, and we weren't able to get the good projects that we needed here in St. Bernard. So I thought that was important, and luckily, you know, Guy McGinnis, when he became parish president, shared the same vision. So when we came in, we were really able to collaborate and you know, still hold our stance on the diversion issue. You know, we've passed many ordinances and resolutions through council and have really been able to bring the issues for our fishermen that project presents to the forefront, but also to be able to push forward the meaningful projects that we needed. And I know John touched on it earlier, forming a coastal department. How unbelievable is it that, St. Bernard Parish doesn't have a coastal department? So being able to put people full-time in our office that are just dedicated solely to that was so critical for us coming into office, and it has paid off in leaps and bounds. I mean, it's really incredible what we've been able to accomplish with, just a small start, and I can't wait to see, how far we can go from there.
So what are your priority projects? What do you think, we talked a lot with John about various ones. What do you see as important, creating marsh is one thing, but you and I were talking before about the things that go hand in hand with that are important as well.
Sure. So a lot of, when we first got in, John mentioned we had $5 million, and we wanted to see how far we could make that go. And so we started seeding some projects to kind of get them going through the process. One of the things we wanted to look at is what will people see the most? Which ones will have the most immediate effect on our communities that are actually living in the midst of this, right? So Delacropa Island, Wyclosky, Hopedale, Shell Beach, like what projects can we do that people will actually see the effects of it? So that's when we did the Bayou Terre Buff project, which is, we're actually seeing come to fruition now, which is very exciting. But, the marsh creation projects are great, but they're patches, right? And we need a whole-scale look at, our coastal plan. So that's where the sediment pipeline that you discussed earlier came in. Being able to have that dedicated source of sediment is so important, and it's a response to diversions as well, right? That brings us the sediment that we so desperately need without as much water, which is the part that really
That's
creates
the
an
issue.
issue for us. So we're really excited to see that start to come to fruition. Also, protecting the marsh or growing the marsh or building the marsh inside doesn't do us any good if we don't have the protection from the outside.
So barrier islands.
Barrier islands has been a focus of us, of ours since the beginning. We really need to find a way to have, that barrier outside that protects us from the storm surge. If we have, when storms wash in, and they're going to, if they're washing away the marsh that we're building, we're not doing any good.
And we got to get a stopgap before they get to that marsh, right?
We have to knock down that wave action. We have to be able to have that first layer of protection so that the marsh we're building inside is more meaningful. So we've been able to start that project. We've done the initial study phases of that to be able to put that on the radar, and hopefully we're hoping that this gets picked up in the next master plan.
Well, as we wrap up, and there are folks sitting out there saying, okay, it's important. What can I do as an individual to get involved, to help? What are the little things, big things that you see that someone out there could do to help our parish?
I mean, a lot of it is really just being aware. Being, understanding what this means to us, understanding, advocating for, the things that we need, and understanding that, they are critical, and, sometimes the coast can seem like a far off thing, and
especially if you're up here
in St. Bernard, it's not, So, I mean, the biggest thing I encourage people to do, especially if you're, on the western side of the parish, is go drive and see, the amazing area that it is down there, because it's a different world. And, it's beautiful and it's amazing, and I think that a lot of people on the western side of the parish don't get to experience that. So take a ride down past the Violet Bridge, see our seafood communities, and I think when you do that, you get a real respect and a real feel for how important that is to St. Bernard. And we try to have events that encourage people to do that. We host a seafood market a couple of times a year, where residents can come down. We have people come from all across the metro area, that'll come to Delacropa or Hopedale and buy shrimp and crab right off the boat. You not only get to interact with the seafood boats right there in their natural habitat, right? And see the water and see the marsh, and you understand what you're fighting for, and it makes it real. The tree plantings are always a great way for people to be involved if you want to actually get out there and see the marsh and be a participant. But you know, there's events across the parish that we try to promote that just makes it real for people and kind of brings it home on how important of an issue it is.
All right, well, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your vision and providing all that insight. We so appreciate it. Now, one way you can get involved, as Kerri talked about the events that are held throughout the parish, are things like the Cook-Off for the Coast. Take a look.
This is a very important event to get the word out, really, for what's going on in St. Bernard Parish and for the coast of Louisiana. It's one thing to come here and enjoy the music and eat all of the food, but to learn about what's happening on our coast and the restoration efforts that's happening. So the Mural Foundation is very involved in that, and they're a major sponsor of this event. We're working on some shoreline protection and restoration with them, with some oyster reefs and some mulching work with the Mural Foundation and doing all that stuff. So a lot of that's complicated, but when you get out here today and you enjoy all the fun and the food and the music and you talk about it, it's something that we need to educate our citizens on.
I think that the parish, a lot of the progress that they've made, I mean, it's a great example for what people can do when you have all the community comes out and gets involved, and people really know a lot about what's happening with restoration. They care and they want to be engaged, and we're seeing, St. Bernard get a lot of progress happen along their coast because of that dedication. What happens in St. Bernard is important to what happens in Orleans Parish, and everything that's happening in St. Bernard has a direct impact on protection, not just here, but beyond.
This is a prototype of a reef breakwater system. So breakwaters are think of it as a dashed line in front of a coastline. It traps sediment, it keeps waves from hitting the shoreline and eroding it, and it actually kind of builds, the land will build out to it. This program's raised in money to lay out about 250 feet of this.
I think this is a really good turnout. I've seen a lot more people this year than I did last year, so hopefully we'll win again. Last year was our first year doing this event. It was really fun, a lot of fun. We did a duck and andouille gumbo, and we wound up winning the crowd favorite. That was really something. Everybody's got good food. It's all good. Everybody's got their own thing, and it's all good. Just see who's his best.
This is my first time doing this dish. It's delicious. I took some duck breasts, I marinated them for 48 hours, smoked them for an hour, and then I wrapped them with bacon, and I paired it up with some fried Brussels sprouts, and then the juices from the duck, I made a reduction sauce with guava and peppers, and took the fat from the duck and made cracklings. So it's really amazing.
Last year was my first year. Our first year we did duck andouille gumbo, and it won People's Choice. We ran out so quickly because people kept coming back for thirds and fourths and fifths, which we were gladly giving out, eat our work. Okay, we poured a lot of onions and tears into that. This year we had alligator sauce pica, and with a little sherry sauce on top, and everybody loved it again and kept coming back for fifths and more. So it was just a wonderful event. All the other teams are so sweet and nice and just playful and bantering. It was a great competition and so much fun.
We are now joined by the Executive Director of the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, Bren Haase, and we are here at the Center for River Studies, the LSU and CPRA Center for River Studies, which is a fascinating, beautiful complex. Thanks for letting us come and tour this with you today, Bren. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, welcome.
And this was built for education, and what really is the purpose behind this other than that?
Really two purposes. It's a research facility that LSU and professors and students from LSU use to study the Mississippi River and our coast and our southeastern portion of our Louisiana's delta and how the river affects that delta. But it's also an outreach and an educational facility as well. You can see the part of the exhibit that's here in the hall that we can bring students in, talk to them about the story about our coast, what's been going on, what's the history of our coast, how was it formed, why are we losing it, how are we
lose it and talk to them about the things that we're doing to try to help restore it and save that coast.
And St. Bernard is a big factor in all of this, and working very, very closely with you all now on a number of projects. Didn't used to be that way. St. Bernard didn't even have a coastal division. What's it been like now to work with a true coastal division and work and plan for these projects in St. Bernard Parish? Because it's one key of the whole puzzle here.
It's been great, in a word. So, you know, St. Bernard obviously is ground zero for a lot of the issues that I was just talking about: land loss, coastal loss, loss of our culture, heritage, fisheries, and so forth along coastal Louisiana. So, you know, since President McGinnis has been in office, he's really taken he and his administration have taken a proactive approach to working with CPRA. And partnering and helping to facilitate getting projects done within that area. Of course, President McGinnis is on the CPRA board, so he's very in tune with what's going on here at CPRA and with our board that really directs the work that we do here at CPRA. And so they've just been a pleasure to work with. The parish has invested some coastal dollars in getting a number of projects engineered and designed and sort of getting them poised to take the next step. And when a parish does that, they have skin in the game. It makes it much easier for us to be able to, you know, partner with those parishes, just like St. Bernard, and get projects built and on the ground for the citizens of those areas.
Well, let's take a look at this exhibit here. It says unintended effects.
Sure.
So this we know is St. Bernard. We're looking at Delacropa.
This is Delacropa. Yeah.
And as it bends up, Reggio.
Yep, Delacropa and on up into Reggio. So this is Sweetwater Marina right here.
Okay.
Bayou Terre Buffs. The Bayou Terre Buff Ridge, of course, that's settled where folks live and folks have homes and so forth, and camps, of course, as well. So this is just a photograph that really illustrates the vulnerability of our coastal communities. So, you know, historically, all of this area would have been wetlands, would have perhaps even been forest and swamp. Likewise, all of this area.
So it would have all been pretty much dark compared to what we're seeing now. There's more water here than there is land.
Much more water than land, and of course that makes this community, like Delacropa and other communities across coastal Louisiana, much more vulnerable to storm surges, hurricanes, and even man-made disasters like the oil spill.
Yeah, and so we're seeing where the arrows come in, the storm surge. That's usually the direction where these things comes right in, and there's nothing to stop it. So what are we doing in this area? What's the project that we're talking about there to stop that?
Sure.
Slow that wave action down?
Yeah, so over the last just several years or so, there's been about a $1.5 billion, a little over about 1.6 billion with a B, investment in St. Bernard Parish for risk reduction projects and for restoration projects. Again, a lot of that's been facilitated by the actions of the parish. We've been able to partner with them to get some of those things implemented. But this is a great picture sort of illustrating that. Of course, we've got the Bayou Terre Buffs Ridge right here. There's actually rocks, will. So that's on the ground. You don't see it in this picture here because it's a relatively new project, of course, but that's a project that was designed by the parish. They provided some funds. We were able to provide some funds and get that on the ground. There are other projects. So you mentioned this large kind of open water area. There's a East Delacropa Marsh Creation Project, a North Delacropa Marsh Creation Project, and then a Reggio Marsh Creation Project that are all in engineering and design right now. Those will have to compete for funds through the QIPRA program, but we're very hopeful and confident that these will be funded and can be built in the near future to help protect, you know, this
because you look at this and you say, this is kind of a no-brainer. Look at, you know, there's not much left. This water's just gonna be over here if we don't stop and do this project.
It will, and it has. Last year, of course, was a prime example of that. Many of these levees were in fact overtopped.
And they weren't even considered major storms.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
It's kind of
but that's
sobering. Yeah.
Another, you know, I think positive of the relationship that we have with St. Bernard Parish now is being able to work through those emergencies. Last year was again a prime example of that. There was a lot of need for a lot of pumps, a lot of, you know, technical advice. We were quite active last year, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. And as they say, you know, every year they kind of tell us this is going to be another active year. You never know, but
right.
It's kind of crazy. Well, in the scheme of things, as we wrap up, Bren, how important is St. Bernard and what we do in St. Bernard Parish together as a team, as the piece of this whole coastline? What would you say the significance of this is?
Oh, well, it's key. I mean, of course, all of our coast is important, right? But as I said, St. Bernard is it's on the front lines of all of these issues in terms of land loss. Again, working coast, food production, if you think about fisheries, and risk reduction, as we were just talking about. So St. Bernard is on kind of the outer edge, if you will, as well, of our coast. Of course, it's the easternmost parish, eastern and northeasternmost parish along our coast, and so it's typically for any kind of a hurricane that's hitting east of essentially Delacropa, really, the entire parish is just in the bullseye. And so making sure we have a healthy, resilient St. Bernard is not just good for St. Bernard, it's good for the rest of the coast, St. Tammany, Orleans, Jefferson, the river parishes even. Without St. Bernard, the landmass of St. Bernard where it is, then the situation for those other areas of our coast is even worse.
Let's just wrap up real quick by saying what's coming up that you're excited about, that we're in the planning stages and kind of the next, because we saw what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are lots of additional projects that are coming up. Of course, one of the things that I'm really excited about is the long distance sediment pipeline project on the East Bank, and so that'll take sediment from the Mississippi River and pump that across Plaquemines Parish and deposit some of that in Plaquemines Parish, but ultimately hope to get to this area right around in here, right in St. Bernard Parish. Right. And so that's taking sediment that's not really part of the coastal system. It's sediment that's outside of the system, and it's adding it to the system, which is really the fundamental problem facing coastal Louisiana. We need to add more sediment so that we can rebuild these wetlands. So I'm really excited about that. We'll be expanding, of course, on the Bayou Terrebuff Ridge Restoration and Reforestation Project. Mentioned the 3 marsh creation projects right here. There's another phase of Lake Leary that's right in this area as well that's going on. So there's 6 or 7 projects that are in the works that we anticipate beginning within the next 2 or 3 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and St. Bernard Parish thanks you really for working with us and being so diligent and with these projects, because it's so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we love working with St. Bernard, and we're very happy that there's so much activity going on there right now.
And that is it for this coastal edition of our show. From Baton Rouge, I'm Karen Boudry. Hope to see you next time on Shaping St. Bernard.